Well, I like making food that tastes good, and I don't even mind making food that tastes bad. But if I had to choose, I think I'd pick the former. So if you want to know how to make it a little bit better, but maybe not quite as good as it maybe could be, I think that you should listen to what I'm talking about. And if you learn a little something from this, well, I hope it served a purpose, and hey, that's what we're here for. Good, better. Nailed it. Woo! Hello, and welcome to the Cook Better podcast. My name is Corey, and today we've got a few different things that we're going to talk about, but I'm sorry I missed last week. I'm a one-man operation here, and I know that consistency is key, and it was a busy week last week, and other excuses that I have that you don't really care about. So we're back at it, and we're going to get into it today. I believe this is episode number 23, which is awesome, and I'm excited about it. It's been an interesting week, though, to say the least. I currently am living the bachelor life, which it's only into day 2, and I'm realizing that I'm glad that I have my wife and my kids. I knew that before now, but I had for dinner, I'm reheating pizza as we speak. That was left over from last night because I'm lazy when I'm by myself. And also, I love an anchovy on a pizza. And when my wife and kids are here, I don't get anchovy on my pizza. So this is a special time to indulge in something that I really enjoy that they do not. I think that my wife's never going to eat anchovies on pizza. Maybe there's hope for my kids to enjoy the complex flavors that are an anchovy involved in a pizza. But it's been interesting for other reasons as well. I'm currently sitting here waiting for, just keeping an eye on my dog, Fern. She's not even 6 months old, and I have got a PSA for all those who have a dog. Get rid of any toys that are rope-based, rope-like, that have a lot of strands, a lot of strings, because I'm just going to be honest. It was a lot of money involved in this past week, and that's because my dog decided to chew up to the point, and I don't even think it was that crazy because I looked at the toy. It's not like she swallowed an entire toy, but there's a rope toy like that you'd kind of play. I don't know. You've seen rope toys for dogs, and she swallowed some of the strings that were part of that toy, and that made it so that her intestines got blocked. And then Memorial Day, we had to go. I went at 10 o'clock at night and brought her to the vet, or emergency dog vet, which is insanely expensive, and went in there and had her looked at because she was acting kind of funny all day. And so I went there and they did x-rays, and sure enough, she had a block in her small intestines that hopefully could pass on its own. That didn't happen, so the next day she had to have surgery, and it will make you question whether or not you want a dog anymore. And before I ever had a dog, because I never had a dog growing up, we had one for a short time, whatever, but never had a dog growing up. And when people would say that they spent $3,000 to $4,000 on their dog, I'd be like, dude, I'd be putting that thing down. I'd say that. I said that every time. And then you have a dog, and you realize that it's not that simple of a decision, especially when I took her to the emergency vet at 10 o'clock at night, and my kids had no idea I was gone. They didn't even know that the dog was really that sick. And so just to say, I can't spend whatever money, and too bad, we've got to put her down. I mean, you just don't, that wasn't really, it was definitely an option, and one we strongly considered, and thankfully, we were able to deal with it and able to get her the surgery but at my normal vet, it was much cheaper than it was at the emergency vet because the cost of the emergency vet situation, which to me, the people there were very nice and they provide a service and whatever, but what a racket. It should cost the same as it does at your normal vet. There's no reason why that cost needs to be 3 times as high because they're quote unquote emergency care. What difference does it make if you're there, whatever, everybody's working 40 hours a week, you're open 24/7, but you're paying people the same rate you would probably get paid at a normal veterinary clinic, but you're going to charge 3-5 times as much just because your customer, the people who are in distress because their pet, an animal that they love, is having an emergency. You're a perfect opportunity to just take advantage of these people and hit them in the wallet as hard as we can. Let's charge 5 times more than what their normal vet would cost, for the same care. And like I said, the people that work there, fantastic and awesome people. But what a joke that because it's an emergency, you have to charge more. Your people are there no matter what. If there was nothing happening that night, your people are still there and getting paid their hourly rate. But because people come in with an emergency or something that popped up, hey, guess what? We're just going to rake you over the coals. And that, to me, I'm glad that there's a service out there to be provided for somebody who has an emergency like that. But what a racket. I mean, I could go on for a long time. Thankfully, our dog is doing well. We decided to do the surgery. Thankfully, we could use our normal vet. Still a difficult decision. We are blessed to be able to have the funds to be able to pay for that, although it was very close and close enough where my wife and I had to have a serious talk of whether it was going to happen or not. Yeah, she better not eat a rope. Don't get rid of your rope toys. Anything with a lot of little strings and stuffing, because I tell you what, you do not want to be in the situation where you have to make that decision, and even making that decision, hoping it's right, and whatever. Even if it's not the right or wrong, we're out a lot of money. So, PSA. That's my PSA. But this is a food podcast and about cooking, right? So that's really what you're here for. I know that. I just had to vent a little bit because that's the circumstance I'm in. Many people have been in that circumstance as well. I know that. And I now have a full appreciation when somebody brings that up for sure. And what are you going to do? There are multiple... I don't know. When life comes at you fast, it's you got to be quick on your feet. And thankfully, I guess for the dog's sake, and for we were able to take care of that situation. But right now, I think we've got something that we got to get into, for sure. Yeah, let's get into the food, right? And now, ladies and gentlemen, if I can direct your attention to the meals from last week. Yes. The meals from last week. What did I do? I don't know. There's a lot of different things. I think I did okay, and honestly, this has been a little bit over a week's worth of time, right? It's not just last week. I've been slacking for sure, and now we're looking at a couple of weeks. So I think that I don't really remember where I left off because that line that I'm supposed to draw is missing, and I don't know. In the one meal that I made, I'm not going to go into too much because it is the main thing for this week's episode. So, and I'm going to go into much greater detail. So we're going to leave that one alone. I don't know Anyway, I'm just going to start out. I'm procrastinating and I'm rambling. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. The last one that I remember we talked about is a ham on bun, toasted ham on bun with potato salad. And this was something that my mother-in-law had made. I was over at my in-laws and working on their motorhome with my father-in-law and my brother-in-law. We were redoing the linoleum floor. We had some shoe molding that had to get done. I had some electrical stuff, hooking up a new TV inside their motorhome, mounting a bracket to the wall, all those kind of things. And I was over there helping them with that. And because and my mother-in-law made a meal, and she was getting it together, and she does this a lot, which she doesn't really listen to this podcast, so I'm not going to feel too bad about it. But one thing that she does a lot is apologize for the meal that she made as she's serving it. And even if she listens to this episode, I don't really mind, because I've told it to her before that, look, if you're making me food, you have no need to apologize for what you're making. If I have a problem with it, I can I'll get my own food. You're making me a meal, in any effort and any time that you put in, I appreciate. It doesn't matter who it is that's making me food or whatever, who's making me a meal. If you make me food, I have no right to complain. If you ask me after I've eaten some of it and you say, what do you think about this? And maybe I would say, depending on what it is, I could maybe offer suggestions on my personal opinion, but never apologize. And I say this to other cooks as well. Never apologize for the meal before you serve it, number one. Unless, if it's inedible, that's totally different. You're not going to serve it to somebody if that's the case, if something's charcoal or whatever. But I don't care if you didn't give me top-of-the-line ingredients, or make the bread from scratch and make the rice the way I would have made the rice, or whatever. If I'm eating food that you made for me, then I appreciate that part of it no matter what. Is there room for improvement for everybody? Yeah, there's room for improvement from what I make for other people too. I've caught myself before, sometimes you have a big group over and you're making something, and yeah, it'd be better if it was just one dish that I had to serve and I could make sure everything was hot and pull it right off. But when there's a big group, somebody's going to get something that's a little bit cold, or if whatever it might be. So my hope, I don't know if I made myself clear, never apologize for making somebody food. There's a podcast that I love and I'd recommend to everybody. There's two of them actually, and it branches off of the Duck Dynasty franchise. I love those guys, and there's the Duck Call Room and the Unashamed podcast. Awesome podcast, great to listen to, and I enjoy it very much. But they have the whole thing of, they're from Louisiana. Maybe it's a little different situation since I'm not from the same area they are, but they say that if somebody doesn't cook something that you don't like, say, no, this wasn't good, or it wasn't much, you didn't do this right, you didn't do this right, whatever it might be. And I totally 100% disagree with that. And I come at it from a perspective of somebody who can cook. A lot of the guys that I hear on that podcast that say, oh, make sure to tell somebody if what they did wasn't much, that so that it doesn't happen again, and that it'll be better, because otherwise you'll have to deal with eating that kind of thing for the rest of your life. And I disagree with that 100%. Now, if I make something and I ask somebody, what did you think of this? And they say, yeah, it was a little salty for me, or it was a little undercooked, but thank you so much for making it. And this could have, in my opinion, I like something this way a little bit more than how you prepared it, if I'm going to be 100% honest. But I would never push something away and go, nah, this is terrible. Not going to happen. And why? Because I appreciate the work that somebody put in to make my food. Are you kidding me? You made me food and I'm going to complain about it? Not going to happen. Ever. And I don't expect that from somebody. Now, does everybody need to like everything that I make? No, absolutely not. And I don't expect that to happen. My kids don't like onions and most of the vegetables that I give to them. So if I were to ask them to be honest, and in a way I want them to be honest but is that opinion, am I going to take that as, man, I messed up? And no, what are you doing? Don't, I don't know, take everything with a grain of salt, but at the same time, if somebody's gone through the effort, what were you doing? Even if you were, like in the case of this, where I was helping that person out by doing some work, which is not a problem at all. I don't mind giving my time and help. It was whatever. But even though I'm helping you, so you're making me a meal, am I going to ever complain about it? No. Is there something I might have done slightly differently? Maybe. Maybe there is. But that's not the point. There's no reason that you should ever complain to somebody who's making you food. Are you kidding me? Make your own food. Could have not made me any food and said, yeah, go pick something up on your way home or cook something when you get home. I don't have time to make you a meal. That could have been the situation. And it wouldn't have been. So, yeah, you're making me food. I'm never going to complain. Don't apologize for the food you make. Number one, for the reasons I've said. Number two, because that automatically sets the bar. And I guess in a way, maybe it's reverse psychology. But when you apologize for the food that you've made before you even serve it, maybe that sets the bar low in a way where then when somebody tries it and they go, oh, that wasn't as bad as I was expecting. The way you described the food you just made, it was way better than I thought. So maybe that's the trick there. I just don't like the whole, oh no, I'm sure whatever you made is gonna be great. It's just to me almost fishing for a compliment, even though that might not be the situation. But never apologize for food that you made for somebody. Just serve the food. And you could say something like, I don't know. I don't even like it's not much. I did the best I could. Here you go. There's no need to explain what you have cooked. Just serve the food. If the person is a little bit of a jerk and wants to complain, hey, then next time you go, yeah, sorry. You're going to have to make your own food next time. I'm not going to put my effort into your meal just for you to complain about it. You can do it yourself next time. That's my opinion. I say all that to say this was a meal that my mother-in-law said, yeah, sorry, it's not much, hopefully it's all right or whatever. And it was a ham on bun. Ham and cheese on bun sandwich. She toasted the bread, the buns. It was fantastic. It was a thick cut ham, which tasted great. There's some cheddar cheese on it. We had mustard, a little mayonnaise, just a warm ham sandwich, basically. But it was great. It's hard to. I don't have, and maybe people that know I do a podcast about cooking feel that they've got to make me something elevated. I like. It was fantastic. And we were working hard on some stuff. I don't need whatever. I never need a 5-star meal. It's great. I'll eat a ham sandwich any day. Most days I'll take a ham sandwich for lunch at the very least, and I'm definitely not going to complain about somebody else making me food. So I say all that to say, and then there was potato salad on the side, which was fantastic. I love a good potato salad. There's something about it that just the coolness of a potato salad with a ham sandwich. I mean, you can't beat it. It's great. Anyway, the next day, moving on, I had a quesadilla, my old fallback. This was a night where we kind of fended for ourselves a little bit. We made the kids meals. They don't have to fend for themselves, but just a busy night that we had going. We were working on stuff, and I made a quesadilla. I love a quesadilla. Hard to beat. Moving on from that, the next day, I made a cottage pie. This is what today's episode is about, a cottage pie. Absolutely fantastic, and I would love to go into it at this part, but we'll move on because I'm going to be talking about it in detail later. Skip ahead. I missed the day. I don't remember what we had the one day. We did another day of quesadillas, and then I made a smoked chicken. And this was something I'd never done before. I've had a smoker only for a few months now. I got it around December of last year, around Christmas time. And I've done some chicken breast. I've done some chicken thighs, but I've never smoked a whole chicken. And so this was the first time trying it. I'd got a good whole chicken from Otto's. I've talked about them before. Whatever local place that you've got that does a natural chicken, that they're feeding them good things, find that place. Get that. It scares me a little bit when I go to a place like that and I'm paying $12 at least in Michigan where I'm at. When I buy a whole chicken from Otto's, it's $12 to $13, maybe even a little more depending on the size. And that's for a raw chicken, whole chicken, nothing done to it, refrigerated, ready for you to do what you need to do to cook this thing and flavor it how you want to flavor it. And then I can go to the supermarket. This is a scary thing. I can go to the supermarket and buy a whole chicken that has been on a rotisserie and seasoned up and ready to go, ready for me to eat it in the car ride home if I wanted to, from the supermarket for $7. There's a $5 difference in the cost of the chicken for something that's cooked for me. Excuse me. Something that's cooked for me and ready to go, or something raw that I've got to make and season and cook myself. And there is a lot of reasons behind that, and I've heard something about a lot of the supermarkets when they have chicken that's going to be going bad or has a very short shelf life left, they'll, instead of butchering it and cutting it up and selling it, they'll just put it on the rotisserie and cook it up that way, because then they can serve it and whatever. So it's maybe not the best, quality of chicken that you're getting on the supermarket rotisserie. I don't know if that's 100% true. Never worked there, whatever. But it's anytime you get something that's already done for you and it's cheaper than you can find it at a normal place, and even at the same grocery store, if I buy a whole chicken, it's going to be this more than it costs to buy the rotisserie at the same store. And so I kind of wonder, why are they cutting the cost and they have more work to get me to buy that chicken? It should be the other way around. They put in more effort, they put in more energy, they're paying more electricity and natural gas bill, whatever. It should cost me more to get a cooked chicken that I don't have to do anything than it does when I have to do all the work, right? That only makes sense. But why? So why is it cheaper? There's got to be a reason. It's not out of the kindness of their heart. I can guarantee you that 100%. So I don't know. One of the things I think about. Anyway, I bought a whole chicken uncooked, brought it home, smoked it. Turned out great. It tasted great. I didn't brine it. I didn't do anything. I basically brought it home, put some seasoning on it, put it in the smoker. It cooked for about 4 hours, and then I had some peas with it. These were frozen peas. Fantastic. I love peas. And the cool thing that I did with this was I did like a potato dish with this that was absolutely fantastic. And I believe it's like a potatoes fontaine, but if you want to look it up, I don't know if that's 100% true, to be honest, that's the method. But I took they were russet potatoes that I had left over from the cottage pie that I had made. And they're whole potatoes, nothing done with them. I peeled them, and I cut them to about 3/4 to an inch thick, the long ways. And so I had basically a long oval, an inch thick, and I cut all the potatoes to whatever they were to that. And then after doing that, I had the pan. Now this cast iron skillet I had, you could use any kind of pan, but I put a little bit of butter in there and I had some quite a bit of butter, if I remember right, like half a stick. So it was a quarter cup of butter, something like that. And basically just melted that butter and then put the potatoes in there until the one side was brown. And I'd got the one side browned, looked beautiful, crispy. Flip over the potatoes and the other side's brown, get that brown and crispy. And then I put in some thyme and some rosemary. Now, if you had some garlic, you could maybe throw a little bit of garlic in there, but I didn't do that. I didn't have any aromatics other than the herbs that I put in there. No garlic, no onion. Although you could probably do that and it would be great. But a little thyme, a little rosemary in that butter, added a little bit extra cold butter at the point where I put it in the stove, or in the oven rather, at like 350, maybe something like that. And I want to say it was probably 400. Maybe it was 400. I like to run hot. And then pulled it out once they were fork tender and you could stick a fork in them, and then just kind of basted. I pulled it out after about 10 minutes and just basted the butter, that thyme, a little salt too. You definitely need some salt, but basted that over the top just to kind of infuse that top. Don't want it to dry out. And then, oh, they're so good. So good. And then once they're fork tender, take them out of the oven. And then I put them on a plate and I actually set them in the microwave and just to stay warm for a little while. Took that butter that was left in the pan. Now I've got a butter that has some thyme and rosemary flavor to it because it's almost infused. Put that on the stovetop, and then I took some heavy cream. I love a cream sauce. I've talked about it before. And put a little bit of cream in there with that, mixed it up. Let that simmer a little to thicken. I didn't add any flour or any cornstarch slurry or anything like that. Just let it thicken a little bit. And then took that smoked chicken and had shredded that up. And then I now have a cream sauce and drizzle some cream sauce over that chicken that's got the potato flavor in it. And then those potatoes were so good. My neighbor was home. I saved him a potato and some of that smoked chicken and some peas. I brought it over, and literally today he said, dude, I need to talk to you about those potatoes. They were absolutely fantastic and the best potatoes I have ever eaten. And I'd have to agree with him. I saved him one potato, and, we're talking the length of a potato cut an inch thick, and I wanted to eat it so bad myself, but he was home alone at that time, and so I told my wife and kids, I said, he's never smoked a chicken. He's got a smoker he's getting into as well. And I said, we're going to take him some smoked chicken and a potato or whatever. But I think if you do like potatoes fontaine or whatever and look that up on YouTube or Pinterest or something, it might give you that. It should be similar. Basically, long of the short of it is, a guy who I used to work with used to say, the long of the short of it is a lot of butter. Sear that potato, get that browning on it. It gives you a crust. Fantastic. A lot of butter flavor. That rosemary and thyme go perfect. And then you've got a fluffy inside with a crispy outside. Absolutely fantastic. And then moving on, I made some cheeseburgers. Now this one, I love cheeseburgers, and I like a smash burger. Now, I've talked before about making a peanut butter burger with peanut butter and some onion soup mix, whatever. I like a smash burger, and I like just the salt and pepper and the meat, right? But this time, it was my brother-in-law had come over to help me plant some corn. That's a whole different thing. I've got some corn I planted in the backyard, trying that again. And so I figured I'd get some, make burgers for him coming over and helping me. Beer and some burgers. That's payment for people that help me, FYI. And I was at a butcher, more of a Tom's Meat Market is the name of the place, but it's not, a supermarket. It's just more of a higher end place, whatever. And they got me, and they weren't trying to get me, I don't think, and nothing against them. But when I'm looking at the ground meat, the ground beef, I see ground chuck, like $7.50 a pound, and then I see hamburger meat, ground hamburger meat, and that was like $5 a pound. And I thought, I've got somebody over, I'm making them a meal, I want to get the better stuff, and I paid more money I paid $7.50 a pound for the ground chuck. And I made it into hamburgers, and I'm not going to lie to you, if you're on the fence and you see something like that, the flavor was not enough to justify an extra $2 a pound. It just wasn't, in my opinion. And I think the big difference, though, that I can appreciate in that situation is ground chuck is from a specific part of the cow. And this is where the labeling, and I've talked about this before, but this is where the labeling is key. If it says ground chuck or ground sirloin or whatever it might be, it's from a chuck roaster, it's from that specific cut of meat, it's from a specific muscle area in the cow or the pig or the sheep or the whatever. And if it just says beef, that means that it could be from anywhere on the cow. And typically that means that that's going to be from trimmings, from the leftover pieces when somebody's, when you cut a brisket or you cut a chuck roast or a sirloin or whatever, you're shaving some of the fat off and you're shaving some of the meat off, and whatever's left goes in a pile. And I know this because I've cleaned and processed my own deer, my own venison. And I've got certain roasts that I want, and whatever I cut off, you don't want to throw them away. You put them in a pile, and that's what gets turned into the ground venison. So it's the same situation. If something says hamburger meat or ground beef is the entire cow. It's a big piece of beef on 4 hooves. And it's not a specific chuck or sirloin or ribeye or T-bone or whatever. It's ground beef. Very general, very whatever. And so it's bits and pieces that are scraps. Now, is that a bad thing? Not necessarily. Who cares? If I can save $2 or whatever, do I care if I got a little bit of the cow from this side of the cow, a little bit from that side or this part? No. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. It just means it's not maybe from the choice part of the cow that you would want. So depending on what you're doing, get ground chuck or ground sirloin or whatever to guarantee that it's from that cut of meat. Get ground beef if you don't really care. And my whole point to this last 4 minutes of talking about this is that it doesn't really matter when you're having hamburgers, because I could not taste a difference at all. The big thing was I could say, I bought the more expensive meat because I had a guest over and I was making them food. Does that person care? No, he didn't care at all. I didn't even bring it up to him or tell him. And I'm not going to tell somebody that I spent more money because you were here. No. But I guess that's just my whole point, and that's what's happening with the labeling there. Moving on from that, there was a quesadilla in there again after that, and then I had made a pasta bake. This was great in a great way. Honestly, it's going to make, maybe if you're from I always think Italy when I think of somebody who really, really cares about pasta. And then if you do, plug your ears. But I think that a pasta bake is something that works out great if you need to get rid of or clean out your fridge. And that doesn't mean that you don't put any effort into it or that you don't care or that you're not using good ingredients, but that's just, that's what I use it for, a pasta bake. And it tastes great, and it does not taste like you're trying to get rid of something, but you can add things to it, and maybe, I don't know. I used some rigatoni. I had some good rigatoni noodles. Cook those up, get them al dente. In the meantime, I had some burger in the refrigerator, maybe about 3/4 of a pound or so that was left over from earlier in the week from when I got stuff for burgers. And so I cooked that up and put that in with the sauce. And then I had my noodles, I had my sauce, and then I have like 4 different cheeses that were that needed to get used up. And the bulk of the main cheese that I had was honestly a Colby Jack. Now, for me personally, when I look at that, what would be the normal cheese pairing with a pasta dish, mozzarella, provolone, Parmesan, stuff like that. I didn't have that. I had Colby Jack. That's what I needed to clean. That's what I had left. So that's what I used. I'm not going to just not make a dish because maybe something isn't perfect. Can I make it taste good? Is it going to taste good? Yeah. Is it going to be authentic? No. Does that matter? No, it doesn't. I'm making food for my family. You're making food for your family. Is it better to not waste something and make something maybe not quite perfect per the recipe or whatever, just so that you can use it and it doesn't get wasted? Absolutely. That's how, at least, I don't know. You may disagree with me. That's how I justify it, and it tastes great. My kids ate it. My wife loved it. I loved it. So there's no reason I'm not going to do that. I don't need to be authentic to whatever recipe every time. I think it's more important that I utilize and don't waste the food that I have. So anyway, you have your noodles, you have your pasta sauce. I had some beef, some hamburger meat to that, ground chuck, as I've already discussed. That was what was left over. And then I had gotten some spinach, some fresh spinach from a buddy of mine that gave it to me, who's got a farm, and he grows it himself. So good. I sauteed that in a pan with a little bit of butter. Spinach wilts down so much that I put some sauce in a 9x13 pan. Then I put some noodles in there. Then I did a little bit of cheese with that spinach that I'd sauteed. And then I added more sauce on top of that, added more cheese. Again, I had Colby Jack cheese, a little bit of Parmesan, and then I had some queso fresco cheese. And so we've got some, in theory, Mexican cheese in there, some whatever Colby Jack is, and the spinach and the noodles and the meat and the tomato sauce, and it was really good. And then I had gotten the same person, Brandon, who had given me that spinach that was so good, fresh from their garden. Also gave me some sourdough bread that his wife had made that was absolutely fantastic. And I don't want to, I may have represented myself when in the episode when I talked about grilled cheese. I think I mentioned sourdough and how I think it's a cult, the people that make sourdough. And in a way, I believe that. And not seriously, it's not a cult, but and he's like, I know you don't really like sourdough, but I got a loaf of sourdough when he handed it to me, and I said, no, I love sourdough. I think it tastes fantastic, and that is 100% true. I just don't want to make sourdough myself at this point in my life. I don't have, and it's probably not near as hard. There will probably be a day when I'll go, all right, I'm going to tell you about how I made sourdough and how easy it is. Probably. But I love the flavor of a sourdough. It's just not something that I make. I make a yeast bread, the Dutch oven bread that I talked about the last episode. And just because it's simpler, and it's also a good whole food thing, not just simpler in a not good way. So anyway, that also was along with it. And then the last two nights, including tonight, last night and tonight, I got a Hungry Howie's pizza. What I say about fast food, my fast food of choice is any pizza place. And I was my wife and kids are headed out on vacation. I'm meeting them here shortly. But the last two nights I've had on my own, and I ordered a Hungry Howie's pizza, thin crust, anchovies, pepperoni, and mushroom. And it doesn't get much better than that. And there are people who are thinking that is absolutely disgusting, and you are so wrong. Anchovies on a pizza are so good. And it's, but anyway, there's a reason I only get anchovies on pizza when I'm by myself. It was a thin crust pizza, tasted absolutely fantastic. And that was what my leftovers were, what I had for dinner tonight. So, and not much more to say about that. I didn't make it, but anchovies are great if you're making a Caesar salad, a traditional real Caesar salad. The dressing is going to have anchovy in it. It's an umami flavor that is in a lot of different things that is just there. It's not super fishy. It is salty. I'll give you that. It's a little fishy, but not crazy. Anchovies are just, I don't know. They're so good, and they provide that umami flavor that just elevates something. And I think it really is great on pizza. It just does something, the tomato with the tomato sauce and everything else. So good. But that's it. That was the meals from last week. I also, last night I had my Hungry Howie's pizza, and I sat on my back porch, my back patio with a good cigar, and I like a good cigar too. It doesn't even have to be a good cigar anyway. There's something about just having a cigar while you're sitting and relaxing. And I just like it. I've had people ask me, like, oh, you got a deep voice. And I don't say this, I don't want it to sound weird, but people have asked me, I sing a lot. I sing at my church, and I love Johnny Cash, and I didn't do anything, and none of us do, right? For the voices that we have, we may work on techniques of whatever for singing but we're given what God gives us, right? So when somebody, I just love hearing, and I don't have a response to that makes sense to me. Is like, you just get it. I joke around with it, and I say, well, that's the 10 years of smoking that cigarettes, that you smoke cigarettes, I'll give you a raspy voice, or I eat gravel. That's what, on the weekends I eat gravel, and that'll help with your voice or whatever. Just joking around, obviously. Don't smoke. Smoking's not good for you. I don't think kids, whatever, don't do it. But I enjoy a cigar, and it's just relaxing to sit and have a good cigar, and especially after a anchovy pizza and whatever. And it's a wonder when I look at myself sometimes and think back. I am very thankful for my wife that she. Of course, she's gone, and I do that when whatever. She knows I have a cigar or whatever, but yeah. Anyway, I don't know where I'm trailing off. I do that a lot. You know that. But let's get into the topic of this week's episode here now that we're 40 minutes in. The cottage pie. Man, what a great dish the cottage pie is. And I grew up having shepherd's pie, or what was called shepherd's pie. The cottage pie, I've recently learned, thanks to Gordon Ramsay, because I was a donut before he told me about it. It's not a good Gordon Ramsay impression, I understand. But I don't know what it is, honestly. Okay, I'll stop. I'm sorry. It started out as an impression of Gordon Ramsay, and it trailed off into something stupid. But I just came across a Gordon Ramsay video making shepherd's pie, and that's what we always called it growing up. I did learn that shepherd's pie means that there's lamb in there, because the shepherd's shepherding the sheep. A shepherd's pie is lamb. A cottage pie is the same thing, but you don't have lamb, you have beef. That's the only difference, is the beef instead of lamb. Cottage pie, shepherd's pie. I titled this cottage pie because I made this with beef. Does it matter? I don't know. I mean, are we hitting up on technicalities? No. But I guess that's the difference. And I grew up, we always called it shepherd's pie growing up. And I don't even remember how many times my mom made this dish. And but it was definitely a meal that I remember having. And it's a great way to use, again, the little bit of ingredients that you have left over, a fantastic way to use them up and to stretch them, because you don't need a lot of all these different things. And it's kind of a casserole. I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Michigan. I guess technically we're the Midwest, and casseroles are a big, everybody brings a casserole to a potluck or whatever, a get-together around here. Tuna noodle casserole. I cannot think of another one off the top of my head, but they're broccoli cheese casserole. I don't know. Any example that you could think of would fit in. And so I think that a shepherd's pie or a cottage pie is very similar to a casserole in that it's using a little bit of a handful of ingredients to combine them into one pan to make a complete dish. That's what a cottage pie is. And I'd watched Gordon Ramsay's, he's got a shepherd's pie video, and he does reactions to other people making shepherd's pie and does things with, talks about how good they are, how terrible they are. And so it intrigued me, and I thought, hey, I've got some beef, I've got some potatoes. Let's make this meal. I want to try it because it's something that I had grown up, like I said, and I don't remember exactly how my mom made it. I just remember that there was beef, there was some vegetables, there was potatoes, and there was cheese. I mean, how can you go wrong with those things? As a kid, I don't really care about vegetables, but I like meat, I like potatoes, and I love cheese. And so I remember liking this meal. And like I said, I don't remember how my mom made it, but I haven't had it probably in 10 years. Not something I make often, although it's now going to be something that I make more often after making it, because I got to tell you, this turned out fantastic and so much good flavor. So that's the last reference I think that I'm going to make to Gordon Ramsay. Watch his videos if you want, because the way I made it is very similar to the way he does it in his videos about it. But I'll explain to you what I did. So I had beef. This was like I talked about earlier, this was just a ground beef. I didn't grind it myself. I bought it from the store. The supermarket actually had it on sale. This was not ground sirloin. This was not ground chuck. This was ground beef. Who knows what part of the cow it came from? All I know is it's cow. It's beef. And so an easy way to make it and a very plain way to make it is just to do ground beef, maybe season it with salt and pepper. That's it. That's your ground beef mixture. I actually went above and beyond because I like to add complexity of flavor. And I had a lot of the things already at home, so I figured I might as well make it and make it as intense and as good as I can. The only thing I didn't have, I had picked up the beef, and I didn't have any wine. I'm not really much of a wine person, so I don't know a lot about wine. And in all honesty, I'm a little intimidated about cooking with wine because I don't know a lot about it. I don't have you look it up and they say, you ask what kind of wine should I use for cooking? And they all say, whatever wine you would normally drink. Well, I don't drink wine. So how am I supposed to? Yeah, thanks for the help. Whatever wine you'd normally drink, whatever red wine you'd normally drink. Okay, that does me no good. But there's a Pinot Noir, or I think that's what I ended up getting, a red wine. I don't want to spend $20 on a bottle of wine that all I'm going to use is a quarter cup in my recipe, in my cooking, and then have it go to waste and not something. I'm not going to drink it just because I'm not a wino. So it's just going to kind of be for cooking. I bought a $8 bottle of wine. Would the dish have tasted better with a $30 bottle of wine? Maybe. I don't know. But it tasted great using this red wine. Now, if you're somebody that doesn't want to use any alcohol, then okay, don't eliminate that. Maybe use some beef stock. And that was what a lot of people said. Use a beef stock or something. There's tannins, there's the grapes, there's the different flavors in a wine. The alcohol cooks out. We're not getting any alcohol in our food. The heat will cook it out. It's just an added element, an added flavor that's there that just gives the meal, gives the dish something extra. And red wine is very common in cooking with beef. So I had a cheap bottle of wine, and that relatively cheap. There were some that were like $5, and I don't even understand how it's possible to grow grapes from the ground, do all the work to ferment and create it into wine, buy the bottle and the label and all that, and package it and ship it, and then only charge $5, even $8. It blows my mind that that's a possibility. But anyway, I used a cheap bottle of wine, It tasted great. Tomato paste. So here's what I did. I just throw the word tomato paste out there. That's apparently, you can't see my hand gestures, but I even gestured with no context. Get your beef, ground. What I did is get the beef, put it over heat. We've got a lot of fat. It was just like a 80-20 mix, something like that. Doesn't really matter. Get it browned. So now I've got ground beef. I'm cooking that meat. I'm not necessarily looking for any crust on the meat. I'm just cooking the meat. You could throw a little butter in there if you want. It's not 100% necessary. Once that fat starts to render in the beef mixture, you're going to have enough liquid in there where you're not going to get anything burning. And so just cook it down, and then I drained the fat out. After I drained the fat out, I added, I took the beef completely out of the pan. I think I left a little bit of the fat in the pan, not much. It was just kind of what was hanging out after I dumped out the beef mixture, and just set that in a bowl on the side. I took some butter and some garlic and a little bit of chopped up some onion, pretty fine dice on an onion, maybe about half an onion, and some garlic. And then I chopped that up and sauteed that, got it nice and soft. After that, I put in some tomato paste, and just to kind of cook that tomato paste through, and then I had some beef base. I've talked about this before. Is the beef base necessary? No, I've still got some left in from what I've been cooking earlier. Haven't run through the same jar I've had for a long time, so I'm going to use it. Just boosts that beefy flavor. Put that beef base in there, let that cook a little bit, kind of cook it in, and then I dumped the ground beef itself back into the pan and mixed it around. Now I've got that tomato paste, that beef base, that onion, that garlic, a little bit of butter, a little salt and pepper or seasoning. Now we've got a lot of flavor that's in there. And then I put in the red wine. Now this was only maybe a quarter to a third of a cup of red wine. Put that in. This pan, I didn't have a fond built up, but if you do have any burnt chunk or, a fond built up in your pan, if you use a Dutch oven or whatever to make this, now you've got, now you can deglaze it with the wine or whatever. I didn't really have a fond, but I put that red wine in there, and it just, immediately starts bubbling and sizzling, and the alcohol starts to burn off, and it's just flavoring. Now it's just another layer of flavor. And after that was done, then I had some, or cooked down for a little while. You can add some water if it's kind of dry. I don't want a real dry mixture. This was not super soupy, a little liquid-esque, but kind of pasty almost is what you're going for if it's got a little bit of liquid. Now, again, as you're cooking that wine down, things are evaporating, and so it's going to end up more firm and more thick than it does initially as you first start cooking. So you might need to add a little bit of water or a little bit of beef stock to it. You don't have to, but just depending on your mixture, whatever you think might be right. So I did that. I added a little bit of water. In my case, it needed it even after a little bit of the wine. And then once it got to the right consistency, pull it off. And you can let it cool down, doesn't matter. Not a big deal. In the meantime, I had some potatoes going. I used russet potatoes. They're great for a mashed potato. And before I do that, I did add some frozen vegetables. I had a pea, carrot, green bean, and corn mixture of frozen vegetables that I added. Now, the freezing, I've talked about this before, but frozen vegetables are great because they get flash frozen at the time of harvest. And so in a way, if that's not something that you can find fresh where you're at, it's a good way to get something at the peak freshness that's frozen. Frozen vegetables are great. So I had put that in the beef mixture and let those soften before I pulled it off the stove. And so that's just kind of getting also infused in the meat and getting some of those flavors packed in. But the potatoes, russet potatoes, boil them in water, cut them into small chunks. We're making mashed potatoes. Cut them into small chunks and get them boiling. And once they're fork tender, drain the water And then what I like to do, I had a good amount of butter to my mashed potatoes. Good amount of butter. I had some heavy cream, so I added a little heavy cream. You can use whole milk or whatever milk you have. It would be another option, but I did like half a stick of butter, whole milk, salt and pepper, and then I took a big scoop of sour cream, put that in there, and just mash it all up, get them as smooth as you can. For a shepherd's pie, cottage pie, I want a very smooth consistency on the mashed potatoes. So that sour cream gives a little extra tang in there. You don't want to put too much in, but it just creates just an added flavor, again, like the wine does to the meat. That just is something, a point of interest if you're really tasting something, or something that somebody might go, oh, these mashed potatoes, there's just a little something extra in there. I can't put my finger on it. It's the sour cream. So try that. And then I mixed some fresh chive. I diced up real small some fresh chive in there. You can use ground chive. I didn't put a lot in there because I'm going to use the chive as a garnish at the end as well. So I didn't want to get overboard on the chive in the potatoes, but I put a little bit of the fresh chive in there and whipped them up real good. I mean, that's our components. So then I just spread in a pan. I put the meat layer on the bottom. I spread that out. I took the mashed potatoes and put them on that. Now, I forgot to mention that Gordon Ramsay, I said I wouldn't mention him. If you do his method, you take an egg yolk. Take an egg yolk and mix that in with the mashed potato. Now, to me, I'm sure it tastes good. I just honestly forgot about it. But an egg yolk is going to thicken. Maybe that gives a little more structure to the mashed potatoes. It changes the color a little bit. Does that matter? No. Maybe an added flavor. Definitely, a yolk doesn't have a ton of flavor, but there's a richness in an egg yolk that you might get. So if I would have remembered to do it, I would have done it. I forgot. If you think of doing it, put an egg yolk, just a single one egg yolk in with the mashed potatoes, mix them up. Again, you want to mix it quickly. The idea is not to get scrambled eggs in the middle of your mashed potatoes. You want to incorporate it and emulsify that so that it's just part of the overall mixture. But I did not. Sorry. But get your meat, put your potatoes on top of it, spoon it smooth. You can do a pattern. Some people do, if you do like a cottage pie, that you're not going to use any cheese. Some people will put a little bit of cheese in with the mashed potatoes so that you just get a little cheese flavor incorporated. I like to do the cheese on top as opposed to that. But if you're going to incorporate it in with the potatoes, then you can take a fork and maybe back and forth, make a grid, so to speak, on top, really dress up that so that when you put it under the oven in the broiler or in the oven, you'll get crispy bits at the top that just make a really cool pattern. Also provide a little textural difference there. But I did the potatoes, just did them smooth because I put cheese on there. Now I had a Colby Jack cheese. You use a regular cheddar cheese, mild or sharp, however you want to do it. I like the idea of a sharp cheddar, something that's got a little bite to it because you got the creaminess and the smooth richness of mashed potato with a heavy cream and the sour cream in there, and then you've got the richness of the meat, the beefy flavor, kind of the decadence you get with the salty, just the umami of a meat there, creaminess of a mashed potato, the sharpness of a cheese, and the way that would all go together. So a sharp cheddar cheese would work great. I had Colby Jack, so that's what I used. It's kind of the cheese that I always have. And it was absolutely fantastic. Melt that or shred that, put that on top. We're shredding our own cheese from the block, not using it out of store-bought pre-shredded stuff because I want it to melt so much better together, not have the cellulose in there, the anti-caking stuff. And put it in the oven. I just threw that in the oven. I mean, everything's cooked, right? We have our potatoes are cooked. Our beef mixture is cooked. Our cheese, we're basically just melting the cheese and making sure that the dish is warmed throughout. Fantastic. Put that in. the oven. It only needs maybe 10 minutes. Throw it at like 400 degrees. I will say, and I learned this the hard way the night I made it, put a sheet pan underneath. If you've got a 9x13 like I did, that was packed pretty full, and then I put cheese over the top. That fat will start to melt out of your cheese and bubble over the side and cause you to open all your windows, and fire smoke alarms will go off. And so just be careful when you're doing that, when you've got that cheese in there. Watch for bubbling over, but get that cheese a little brown on the top if you want to, and just make sure it's melted. Pull it out once that happens, and like I said, I then garnished it with some fresh chive on top, and then let it cool. Let it cool for a good 10 minutes because it's going to be hot, and you also kind of want that. Anytime you have a meat mixture like that, super hot, it's kind of loose, so to speak. But if you let it cool for 5 to 10 minutes, then it's almost the fat and everything has more gelatinous quality, and it'll start to set up just a little bit and just make it easier to scoop. Same thing with like a lasagna, or there's a lot of dishes like that where just let them sit for 10 minutes, 10, 15, 20 minutes, depending on what it is, for all these things to come together and just kind of bind up a little bit better if you can stand to wait that long after you've made it. This meal was absolutely fantastic, and it was great. It was a cold day that just makes something like a cottage pie just that much more just better. I mean, in a 90-degree summer day, do I want a cottage pie for dinner? Probably not. But on a 45-degree day where it's cold and rainy, it's absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So give it a try. If you've never done it before, a cottage pie, it's great. It's a great way to use half a bag of potatoes, a pound of burger that you've got sitting around. If you've got a half a bag of frozen vegetables of a couple different kinds, whatever. You got a quarter cup left in your Pinot Noir bottle. Perfect. We'll use it for our cottage pie. It was great, and I strongly suggest giving it a chance. Give it a try if you've never made it. And maybe you've made it and never made it, just really doctoring up the beef mixture in that way. I strongly can encourage you to try it because it's just so much more added flavor just by incorporating the tomato paste and maybe a beef base or the red wine and the onion and garlic into that beef mixture. So good. So good. So that's it. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. Leave me a comment if you've ever made cottage pie, or maybe if it's something that you think you might try now. It's very easy to make. You got beef, mashed potatoes, and cheese. I mean, how much simpler does it get than that, right? Again, I just thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to next time. Thanks. I'll talk to you later.